Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy show. My name is Hassani. Good to have all of you here with me this morning. It is a Monday morning, and we're going to start this week off right wherever you are chiming in from, your city, your state, your country, whatever part of the world you may be in. Let us know. Put that in the chat box, whether you're on Facebook, whether you are on YouTube. Let us know where you are so that we can acknowledge you. We're going to dive into a conversation today. We're talking about the three most dangerous affair types. Once again, the three most dangerous affair types. Now, there are only three, so they're all dangerous. Now, interestingly enough, depending upon the books you read, the resources that you tap into, you're going to see different variations of these three. Some will say that there are 5, some will say that there are 10. You can have an incalculable number of affair types, but they all fit into these 3 building blocks, if you will, of an affair. And so we're going to talk about these today because once we give you a comprehensive understanding of what that looks like, it's going to give you insight on what you're currently dealing with, how deep it may be, and how to begin to recover. But before we do that, take a moment and just click that like button. Click that share button. I'm sorry, wrong screen. Let people know that we are here. Subscribe to the channel if you've been enjoying the content that we've been delivering for the last couple of years. All right, we're going to dive right in. Really quickly, I want to give you an overview of what these 3 are. Number 1, we're talking about emotional affairs, okay? Number 2, then we have sexual affairs. And then number 3 is what we call the hybrid affair, which incorporates or encompasses both the emotional and the sexual. Now, these look very different. We're going to start with the sexual affair. Now, interestingly, when you look at the statistics, men and women can engage in a sexual affair, of course, but usually sexual affairs are driven by men. There are more men who engage in sex-only affairs than women because that's a drive for a lot of men. And so it is very, very possible for a man to be in an affair relationship, whether it is short-lived or even long-term, and there's no emotional connection or involvement. It is simply just sex. So whether I am traveling across the world, and we know many people who do this, they will travel to far parts of the world, the Far East, right? Southeast Asia, the Latin world, okay, different parts of Africa, and they will find women to engage in sex with. They will travel thousands of miles and spend thousands of dollars getting to a location to engage in sex, okay? For them, it is very transactional. It is what we call a cash connection. I give you cash, you give me flesh. That is the mutual benefit. Now, you may, as a sex worker, play the role of a girlfriend. You may tease me, feed my ego, but I know what it is. I'm not paying you just for the sex. I'm paying you to not talk about it. I'm paying you to not grieve me and to have no strings attached. This is very transactional. This is very physical in nature, right? Now, then there are others who may meet somebody casually at a bar or at a hotel or while on vacation or on business trip, and space and opportunity creates a desire for one to fulfill one's sexual desires. There's no interest in anything emotional, anything relational, anything long-term. It is just a desire to be fulfilled. And that's just my mentality and my approach to life. And so that's what it is. Now, there are those who are what we would call serial monogamous, if you will. They may have serial sexual interactions with specific people. So there's an arrangement now that, hey, when I come in town, or hey, every now and then I'll give you a call, let's exchange numbers, let's have sex. And that's what it is. I'm not interested in relationship. I'm married, I have family, I'm committed in that way. And so that's all it is. That's all I want. And if we can work this thing out, then I'm game. Are you game? It also can show up like this. Some people, and we've counseled those, who have been in a sex ship with another person longer than their primary partner. So I've been married for 10 years, but I've known Susie since, we were in college. Never worked out, never was an interest in that regard, but there was a strong sexual attraction. And so that's the nature of our relationship. She's in relationships, I'm in relationships, we have our primary relationships, but this hides in the shadow of those primary relationships. So if it doesn't work out with my wife, I'll never get with her. I'm going to move on to someone else, but I've always got her in the cut to fulfill a sexual need, because that's the extent and the nature of the interaction. So once again, no emotional involvement. It is highly sexual. Now, interestingly enough, folks, sex-only affairs are typically the ones who are not discovered, or that are not discovered. If it's just about sex and Thursdays at 7 at such and such a location is just what we do, we don't need to be involved in a whole bunch of texting and phone calls and coffee meetings and lunches and things, because that's not the nature of what we do. This is very transactional, okay? So you have a need, I meet that. I have a need, you meet mine. Boom, transaction, see you next week, you see? And so because of it, these are less discovered. They're more hidden, and this is why these type of relationships can last a whole lot longer, okay? Then we have the emotional affairs. Now, generally, emotional affairs are led by women, because women are wired more emotionally. Not to say that men don't engage in emotional affairs. We know that there's been an evolution of infidelity, and because of familiarity, because men and women have entered into the workforce and they're working together and on projects together and socializing together, it's easy for an emotional connection to attach, but typically this is led out by women. Now, the challenge with emotional affairs, the language is somewhat new, though the behavior is different. And so what I mean by that is many people are guilty of being in an emotional affair, whether they're aware of it or not. Because there's no sex, because there is no sexual intercourse where we have two naked bodies engaging in a physical stimulating experience, we don't always identify these things as affairs, but they are. And so oftentimes when a wife is in a relationship and a emotional need is not being met, maybe we're not spending enough time together, maybe we're not going out on dates, maybe we just don't connect. It's all about responsibilities and obligations and tasks, and we've lost our relational connection. So a void has been created, but the desire for that emotional need to be met is still there. And because I'm not getting it from you, it drives me out. I'm now hungry and thirsty for something that I do not have. And so I find connection, I find companionship in someone else. And so it seems to be innocent. It seems like it's no big deal, because guess what? We're just friends. Or maybe I'm seeking out just fun. I just want to connect. I just want to enjoy myself. And Bob, oh my God, Bob just has what it is that I've been longing for. And I find myself constantly connecting with Bob and no longer connecting with my husband, Frank. Now, there are many characteristics of it. I mean, literally, I can go down a list of 21 different identifiers that make up an emotional affair. I'll just go through a couple of them. Number one, you talk about things with your emotional affair partner that you typically would not with your spouse. Now, truth be told, communication hasn't been good for a long time. All we do is talk about bills and the kids and what's for dinner. I mean, it's very surface. It's cliche conversations. But oh my God, we can just talk. So it's not like I'm trying to keep conversation from you, but we just don't connect in that way. But I'm able to be free. I'm able to connect. I'm able to engage with someone else in a way that I can't with my spouse. And so that's why this is a sign of an emotional affair. So while this wall is built up between me and my spouse, this window is erected, which allows me to see inside the life of someone else and allows them to see inside my life, and boom, emotional affair. Number two, we hide these connections. We hide these interactions. I'm not going to let my husband know what I'm doing. Why would I? Why in the world would I mess up a good thing? And guess what? We're not doing anything anyway. So I can justify it. I can rationalize it. I can minimize it. But I'm certainly going to hide it because I don't want it exposed, because I like what I'm getting from this interaction, okay? You change schedules to see the person, right? So now you're making adjustments. Your normal day now shifts so that you can find moments to steal in order to connect with this particular person. You think about this person. Maybe this is the first person that you communicate with when you first wake up, and the last person that you talk to when you go to bed. So, I get in bed a different time than my spouse, but I got my phone tucked up under my pillow. And listen, when I wake up in the morning, the first person I'm reaching out to is him. Before I go to bed, I'm yawning, I'm lethargic. The last person I connect with is him. And so he begins my day and he ends my evening. And boy, is there such an attachment. I just feel heard. I feel seen. You see how this thing happens? Now, nothing physically has happened yet, because my need as a woman is emotional. And I'm getting the fulfillment that I need. And so while men are focused on physical penetration, women are focused on emotional penetration. He penetrates my heart. He penetrates my mind. He penetrates my soul. See? So the emotion, even in a healthy sexual marital relationship, most women's sexual needs happen to be emotional. They're non-sexual, they're emotional. Now, of course, women love good sex and they deserve good sex, okay? And when they don't get it, it's a problem. But the emotional component is everything for a woman, okay? And so these are some indicators that you're in an emotional affair. Now, it's a lot easier to discover an emotional affair because we're talking about stolen moments, stolen time, a preoccupation with, a focus on otherly. And so if I just start paying attention for a while, I'm going to notice that there's something different about you. Interestingly enough, when I'm in an emotional affair, my emotions are heightened for the affair partner and significantly diminished for my spouse. In fact, we've seen people who are in emotional affairs begin to romanticize the affair partner and demonize at the same time simultaneously their spouse. Yeah, it happens because something has to happen with these emotions, and they're moving in this direction and away from that direction, which then creates an emotional deficit. And so in my mind and in my heart and in my body, I'm justifying why what I'm doing is okay because I'm experiencing a slow death within my marriage. Okay, so you have the sexual and you have the emotional. Now, men typically sexualize and women typically romanticize, and that's how we lead things out. But number 3, we're seeing that there's this hybrid affair that's beginning to occur. Now, the hybrid affair is the most dangerous of them all because it is a fusion between the two. So when men who are very sexual in nature cross the threshold into the emotional, when women who are emotional in nature cross the threshold into the sexual, those type of affairs become a lot more difficult to break away from, and they're a greater danger and threat to the marriage. If I, as a man, am just engaging in physical sex and it means nothing, listen, I could stop. Right? If I'm in this emotional affair that I'm not identifying as wrong because we're not having sex, but it's just fun, it's just connecting, and I get exposed, I could stop. But the woman who's emotionally connected to the man that she's now engaging in sex with, now she falls into a deep love for this man. Something now shifts and changes. It becomes electric. It becomes magnetic. It becomes addictive, and I just can't let go. When a man who's sexual with a woman now begins to fall for that woman, now he's opened up his heart, and now his affair partner has his heart in a way that his wife doesn't. All of a sudden, there's a deeper intimacy and connection that's hard to pull away from. And it's a struggle. In these situations, you find where people are willing to risk it all. People are literally willing to walk away from spouse and child to fulfill this emotional, deep connection that they have with their affair partner, thus taking it to the next level. And so we've dealt with these in sessions. We've dealt with these with couples. And the process of recovery is a lot different because if those relationships in these hybrid affairs do come to an end, there is such a grieving process Because yes, I'm suffering the loss of what was. I'm suffering the loss of what could have been if I was still there. And now I'm in this marriage. I'm not emotionally connected to my spouse. I'm not sexually attracted to my spouse. And all of my physical and emotional desires are still outward, still otherly, still towards the affair partner. And though we're physically separate, see, this is why I'm saying there's a major difference between being single and separate. Because yes, I'm separate from you. We've brought this relationship to an end. The chasm has been broken, but I'm not single yet, because you're still in my heart. You're still on my mind. You know, I'm still thinking about you and dreaming about you and imagining. And so there's a process to disconnect. So even though the affair is over as of yesterday, today, wait a minute, there's still a tie and a connection. And so there's a process that one has to go through in this recovery process. And so that's why it's so critically important that we are clear about the dangers and the consequences of what we're stepping into before we get into them, because it could be ravishing, damaging to a relationship. Now, what we know for a fact is that when a hybrid affair has taken place, it presents the most danger to the marriage. And it increases the possibility and probability of a divorce even more so than the sex-only affair or the emotional-only affair. There's something about that combination that creates a perfect storm. It is, as they call, a cocktail of danger. And so understanding these three gives us a foundation as we enter into further conversations throughout the course of this series. Listen, I'm going to go to a quick commercial break. We'll be back. Stay right tuned. You're watching, or stay right there. You're watching the Couples Academy Show. Hey guys, we're back. You're watching the Couples Academy Show. We're talking about the three most dangerous affair types. Number one, the emotional affair. Number two, the sexual. And number three, the hybrid, which is a combination or a fusion of the first two, emotional and sexual. Brandon has a question. He says, I had an affair via social media and email 2 years ago. My wife believes there was sex. I've done a poor job of assuming what she knows about the affair. I've told her what went on. I'm stuck. Help. Okay. So once again, even though typically women are the ones who have the primary who primarily enter into emotional affairs, we say that it exists for men too. There was a couple that I worked with couple years ago. They were married for about 25 years. He was in a 24-year emotional affair with his high school sweetheart. Never touched her, never was in the same physical presence of her. They lived about 1,000 or 2 miles away from each other. All they had were phone calls, okay, letters, if you will, and gifts exchanged during holidays through the mail. No physical contact, but it was devastating to the wife. Completely devastating. Now, in this particular situation, yours was more virtual through social media and email, but your wife believes that there was sex. Well, this is why going through a full disclosure process is critically important, where you really dig into the details. I don't know what your conversations have been like. I'm sure you've had conversations, but typically these conversations are very emotional, they're very passionate, and they don't seem to give individuals the breakthrough, the clarity, the closure that they need. I would encourage you to reach out to someone who can help navigate you through it, because the fact of the matter is, if you don't, you're going to be doing it on your own, DIYing it yourself, getting the same results and expecting things to change, which is insanity, and then wondering why you're in a stuck place. So this is where tapping into the wisdom and the guidance and the facilitation of somebody else can help you, because it's quite possible that it wasn't sexual. Well, let me rephrase that. It's quite possible that you did not have sex. But if you remember the 3 components of an emotional affair, and if you don't remember it, you need to go back. You need to subscribe to the Couples Academy YouTube channel, because we just did an episode on this just a few days ago, that there are 3 components to the emotional affair. Number 1, secrecy, because you kept it from her for a period of time. Number 2, emotional involvement or emotional intimacy, because you shared heart, mind, thoughts, feelings, all of those different things. And then there is a sexual energy. Now, you may not have never put your hands on her or vice versa, but there was a sexual energy exchange between the two of you. And so with this sexual energy, right, and the power of your imagination in this high desirability, the thought of a kiss, you imagining embracing her and holding her tight, can be just as powerful and as passionate as 10 hours of physical lovemaking, right? So the imagination and the desire, which is really what affairs are about. Affairs aren't necessarily about the sex. Sex is a byproduct of it, but it's about the intensity of one's desires. It's about desirability. You're desiring something that you do not have. And that desire, you can become emotionally drunken in. And for your wife, because there was a sexual energy, it's just as damaging as physical sex. But in her case, she thinks that there was sex. And so that's why you've got to peel back the layers, deal with the details and the facts, and get the both of you in alignment with each other where there's clarity and certainty. And once you have that, then you're able to move to the next logical step in the recovery process if you know what that step is. I'm just encouraging all of you who are watching right now who think that, you know what, we've had the conversations, it hasn't worked, this is just what we're going to be dealing with for the rest of our marriage. Why would you think that? Why would you continue to do the same thing, do it a little bit harder, be a little bit more committed to doing what doesn't work, and then have to live with pain? You don't have to do that. Reach out to us. Let's set up a discovery call to see how we can assist you. But these are the components that we're talking about. We're going to go even deeper on tomorrow's episode. I hope you got something out of today's conversation. We're really going to peel back the layers of all things concerning affairs so that, number 1, you can avoid them, you can prevent them, and number 2, if you have experienced them, now you have a pathway and you have guidance to overcome them. Love you guys. See you on tomorrow.